Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Tom Collier, the Painting Fool, and I'm happy you're here. I recently celebrated a birthday and my sister gave me this hair for a gag gift. Maybe she was serious, I don't know. My brother said there was $20 in it if I did one of my videos with it on. So, brother, please send cash or check. A gift card would also work. Any similarity to another famous artist is purely coincidental. Just a happy little accident. Today I'll be doing a painting of a lovely field of lavender nestled at the foot of a mountain range. It's called, surprise, Lavender Field. I used a photo from unsplash.com by Léonard Cotte for inspiration. Thank you, Léonard. I'll be using 11 by 14 inch fluid 100 300-pound cold press watercolor paper, paints by Schminke and Winsor Newton gouache, brushes by Sterling Edwards and Princeton. I hope you enjoy watching it. Please consider subscribing. Let's get started having some fun. I can almost smell the lavender now. Okay, kiddies, here we go. As always, we're going to start out by wetting the paper, and in this case we're going to wet the whole thing. At least to get started, we're going to work with a wet paper. That was actually a Hake brush that I used because they hold so much water. I don't paint with them yet. They're a little hard to control. They can do some really cool, unusual things with those brushes. The ones that know how to use them. I'm hoping that I'll develop that skill at some point. Okay, we're using some ultramarine along with some burnt umber to make a nice gray, because we're going to have an overcast sky. I sprayed a little bit of water on there, and now we're taking some tissue and we're going to kind of, blot out, make some kind of fluffy clouds. Works pretty good. It just kind of lifts the paint up, or you tap on there, and gonna make that gray a little bit darker, give the clouds a little bit more depth, because there's nothing like a nice deep cloud. This will dry quite a bit lighter, so you always have to go a little bit darker than you think you should. That's the nature of watercolor. I'm going to put a little more blue into that gray. Give the sky a little variety. And now we'll kind of mop up the excess that's running down. I have my board at about a 20-degree angle, so we have some gravity working. And that's just the way I like to work. If I need more gravity than that, I can always take my hand and tip that board up higher on the top. or tip it over to make the paint run to the side if I want. It's kind of up to me, I guess. You know, just like your painting is up to you. It's your painting, so you can do what you want. Okay, we're mixing up with some cobalt violet and some French ultramarine, kind of a violet. We're going to put in that first mountain and friendly little mountain, as somebody might say. And he looks kind of lonesome, so we got to give him a friend. So back here, here's a little bit lighter, here a little bluer. Here's a friend, and oh, he's got a whole bunch of friends. So yeah, we'll put a bunch of them in there. It's actually a mountain range, and our lavender field is living down in the valley at the base of the mountains. So we're going to darken that up a little bit. That first one, to kind of create a perspective, so it gives us a feeling that things are going backward from there. We need to make these other mountains a little lighter. I just realized I didn't have my overhead light on, so that'll help me kind of see what's going on here a little bit better. Things are usually darker, more detailed up close, and lighter and bluer as they recede off into the distance. Okay, now we've got some helio green along with some sepia to darken it up a little bit, and we're kind of dabbing in a tree line that runs along the edge of the mountains. So it's kind of off in the distance, so again, we're not worried too much about details. I'm going to re-wet the bottom of the page here, and picking up some transparent umber. I should say transparent ochre is what I picked up. That particular color seems to blend really well with the greens. Makes a nice kind of light, earthy olive green color that I tend to like. We're just kind of, putting a real light wash in this foreground for right now. Coming in with lavender, which I made out of transparent ochre. I can't read. Cobalt violet hue is the Schminke color, and we've got it watered out quite a bit so it lightens up into a nice lavender type color. And we're still kind of working wet on wet here, so putting these, I've got my number 4 Princeton Elite fan brush to help me put a little texture into this. It's hard to see, but it's there. And we're going to go back and put a little green, a little helio green, mixed with a little bit of blue, ultramarine. And I like that color so much, I'm going to use it to darken up this tree line off in the distance here. I switch now to a relatively small round brush, I think. Got a little indication of a shadow there where the field kind of dips down, the terrain kind of dips down towards the lavender field. This particular area that this lavender field is planted in, the dirt is got a lot of iron in it, which makes it kind of red. So we're putting that in right now, and we're using Potter's Pink and Madder Brown combination. And now we'll put some grasses in the near foreground, and back to using that old trusty fan brush. Little sepia. There's a kind of a lonesome little tree growing out here in the middle of the field all by itself. Putting some more violet in to kind of give the lavender a little more intensity. still want to bring that nearest mountain a little closer, so put another layer on top of that to darken it up a little bit. And we'll do a little drying. I shut the sound off of the track with the hair dryer, so you didn't have to listen to that, and cut that a little shorter than it actually was too. So now I'm using a kind of an interesting little brush. This is actually kind of a stencil brush, very stiff. It's pretty good for putting things like leaves and small little textures in, and so that's what I'm trying to add right now. And I'm working with a little bit of white gouache to kind of make it look like a highlight on there. As you can see up in the photograph, the very tops of the rows of lilacs are fairly light and bright. Mine aren't quite as pink because we're not doing a sunset in my version of this. We're doing an overcast sky. So we put a little sepia along with some French ultramarine. Kind of create some shadows. Whoops. Too much. You want to, with this stencil brush, you want to get kind of a not too wet a mixture on there. It all kind of runs together. So you know, try to keep it somewhat dry brush technique. Trying to kind of indicate the stems. On the lavender plant. I put a little bit of yellow in there. That's actually, Schmecka calls it pure yellow. And then they have a little bit darker one called Turner's yellow. Time to put some more violet hue in there. A little bit more color. I've got a sponge, and we're going to use that to kind of put the texture in. It's kind of a rough little natural sponge. Works pretty good for this type of thing. Again, you don't want your paint too awfully wet. You want a little bit thicker, heavier, so you don't fill up all the nice little nooks and crannies in the sponge. I'm going to add a little bit of red to my violet, red and ultramarine. See if I can get a little bit darker purple color. The combination of Paraline dark red and cobalt and French ultramarine. Give me that darker purple. And I'm scratching in using the beveled edge on these acrylic Sterling Edwards brushes. Work quite nicely for scratching in little branches and twigs and tree trunks off in the distance, so on and so forth. So one of the things I like about them, beside the fact that they're a mighty fine brush as well. So. I put a few birds up in the sky. Okay, now I'm using some Winsor Newton white designer squash to put these highlights back in. A little bit of sparkle, I call it. Okay, well, we're getting on toward the end of things here a little bit, I think. I just kind of putting some shadows around these trees in the background, and we're just about ready to sign off on this one, I think. And there you have it, Lavender Field. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe, and we'll see you next time.